Hello everyone, thanks for tuning into Sim's Workshop. I hope you're all having a wonderful day. So, today we're going to be reviewing not one, but two books, and there's a reason for that. We're going to be discussing Sunbringer and Faithbreaker today. These are books 2 and 3 of the Godkiller trilogy by Hannah Kennard. Let me just start by saying no, I don't normally do book reviews like this because I'd like to give each book, I feel like, the attention it deserves. However, I read them literally back to back, so my feelings for each are just intertwined with the other. So I cannot review one without talking about the other. I'll try my best in this video to kind of separate the two, but just as a whole, I think the author did such a phenomenal job with the world building here, and the mythology, and the way the gods are created, and how they rely on a belief system. You know, they cannot live without that belief system. You see that with Heseth and Hestra. And those are both gods of fire. One of, just fire, and one of, hearth, like Hestia. I will say throughout the whole trilogy, I was constantly confusing these two gods. It was not until book 3, Faithbreaker, that I finally was able to separate who these two gods are. And that's because one of them lives within Hestra. She lives inside the heart of Aaron, right? He was mortally wounded fighting gods in book 1, or actually before book 1 even began. And inside his heart, the god took refuge, right? She just wants people to rebuild their hearts in their home. She just wants people to believe in her again. Like, her whole mentality is just comfort and safety in a home. She doesn't want fire to be seen as like this villainous thing that Heseth is turning it into. However, even Heseth, her original being, was destroyed at the end of book 1. And in book 2, you're kind of seeing the ramifications of that. Again, the gods in this world rely on a belief system of the mortals. The Talitians, they bring her back very quickly. Usually it takes like years for a god to come back after being destroyed. Again, relying on belief system. However, they bring her back. And they don't just bring her back as a god of fire. They bring her back as this twisted form of her former self with very little memory, but she's like the god of war. So in a sense, she's turned into Ares. A lot of the visualization, especially at the end of book 2, is her kind of this interpretation, female interpretation of Ares. She's like fire, and she has a core of Bridite, which is a weapon, it is a metal created by another god to destroy gods, and yet it is her core. So when you're seeing like the ramifications of book 1 come ahead in book 2, you're just like, wow, there's a lot that's going on that Kisan and sorry, wrong book, Inara, Skedi, and Elo, you're seeing that they did a lot in book 1, and they didn't quite understand what they were doing in book 2. So, book 2, they're pretty much separated. Elo is trying to form a revolution. He's like, you guys are revolutionaries. You have to bring the battle to the king, who is laying siege on your cities. Like, this is a king I loved. This is a man I thought of as my brother, who I grew up alongside, who I gladly would have given my heart to, but he is no longer the same version of himself. He is a corrupt version of himself. But Elo in book 2 is driven by anger. He's driven by heartache. He's driven by this sense to kind of also undo a lot of the things that he did, by waging a war against the gods. He didn't quite understand, he thought gods were just like these things that took control of people. But it's like, yes, I do agree that Godkiller should exist, because sometimes some of the gods did take advantage of the humans, but then you have other gods like Hestra, who just wanted to provide comfort and be recognized for providing comfort. Not all gods are bad, just like not all humans are bad. So I think he was very blinded, and now he sees the effect his blindness has caused. Not just, for him and Aaron, but like on the nation. Like, they led a war against the gods and they killed gods. And now their nation is suffering. It's just like, no, we should be allowed to believe whatever we believe. We should be able to honor whatever gods we would like. And Ella's finally seeing like, wow, we've taken people's choices away. And that's wrong. So he wants to fight against Aaron, right? And Nara, she's still grieving. They think Cassenda's dead, mind you. They think she died defeating Heseth by driving her into the water with a god promise etched onto her skin. They think she's dead. So they're grieving. And Inara, she's also she's a shrine in a way for Skideth, and she doesn't quite understand why. She doesn't understand how she can have these godly powers. She doesn't know why she's tied to Skideth, who's adorable, by the way. So her whole journey is she has to rectify with what she is and learn with what she is, and also rectify her anger with Eren. She has so many feelings. She's so young, so she has so many feelings. And such a lack of understanding of what she is that, it makes her so angry, and you understand that anger from her. I mean, I will say this for the whole series as a whole. These characters are so well done. They are absolutely phenomenal. I think the world building is phenomenal. And you get to see it all come ahead in book 3. At the end of book 2, they're finally reunited. And then in book 3, Inara, discovers she's half god. She discovers her mother's not alive, but her mother kind of abandoned her because she thought she was dead. And then Kissen is there, and then Elo has to rectify with his feelings with Eren, because, yeah, they're in love with each other, but their love is very toxic. So you know that there's not going to really be a good outcome of this romance between them. But they also understand this because they just didn't learn how to love each other properly. And then Skedi as well. Even from book 1, like this small little god of white lies and hope has come so far from book 1 to book 3. And oh my god, the ending of book 3 just broke my heart. But I would read it again in a heartbeat. I really would. I mean, it's just an emotional, like I said, it's emotional. And the characters, like, even Eren, who's kind of just despicable and deplorable, you kind of feel for him. You're like, damn. You were looking for love in all the wrong places because your mother deprived you of love. And then suddenly, you're the only one left of your family because the gods killed your entire family. You understand where he's coming from. You don't exactly like him. Like, in the end, he kind of got what he was, he got what was expected, right? What was coming for him. But you feel for him. Because throughout books 2 and 3, he has a POV, finally. And you're learning more about him as an individual. So you're learning more about him. So you can, in a way, empathize with him. But at the end of book 3, like, I didn't mourn his passing. I mourned for other characters and other gods. And I will say, God, it was just absolutely phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. Phenomenal. This was such a great trilogy. I mean, I highly recommend it. Highly recommend it to everyone and anyone. It's epic fantasy. It's just executed so well on every single front. I mean, the pacing is phenomenal. The characterization, the world building, the mythology, the dynamics, the internal tension, and the rising tension of the plot. The way the plot just kind of builds and builds and builds from book 1 to book 3, finally coming ahead, and you're just like, oh my God, it is a book that was unpredictable. It is a series that is unpredictable, that just kept me like guessing, and it just kept me enthralled. That's why I read books 2 and 3 like back to back, because they were absolutely phenomenal. 5 stars to each. I want so much more, but you know what? That's only because it was so well done. Like, I would read if this book series were 14 books, I would read it. But I mean, it's just such a good trilogy. And I just think everyone should read it. That's it. That's my opinion. Actually, it's a fact. Everyone should read this book series. It's phenomenal. In any case, thank you all for tuning in. If there was a special edition of this series that ever come out, I'm going to snatch that up. Well, let me tell you. In any case, thank you all for tuning in. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with all your book loving friends. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day, and as always, happy reading.